Well, it's August 23rd, 2017, and we're here in the Judaica Suite at George A. Smathers Libraries, University of Florida, and we're here with Mr. DuBow. Mr. DuBow, what is your full name?
My full name is Lawrence J. DuBow.
And your date of birth?
July 21, 1931.
1931. And where were you born?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois. Yes.
That's wonderful. And
Cook County, Mount Sinai Hospital.
Mount Sinai Hospital, 1931. And what were your parents' names?
My mother was Anne. Her maiden name was Cohen.
Right.
My father is William Edward DuBow.
Right.
Yes.
And where were they born?
My mother was born in London, England, and my father was born in Zhytomyr, in the Ukraine,
Right.
in Russia. Their families immigrated to America, to Chicago, because both of their parents had family who had come to America and found their way to Chicago. So that's why they wound up there as well.
I see. And how did your mother come from England to Chicago?
Well, they came by ship,
Right.
landed in New York,
Right.
went through Ellis Island,
Right.
and because my grandmother, her mother, had sisters
Right.
in the Chicago area, so that's where they went. They went to Chicago.
Did any family stay in the Ukraine, or did all of the family come over?
That was my father's family. My mother came from England, from
Right.
London. No, although I have, this is the history of my father's family on his mother's side. His mother was a Peltzer. And this is a complete history of their family going back to the 1500s.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, all the names and the dates and all the people in my father's family going back to that time, which is really quite interesting.
And that's quite unique. It's not many families can do that,
No.
trace their family.
Well, one of my dad's cousins, Mike Carson, did that. He could only go back to 1750.
Right.
But he said it went further, but he didn't go any further. 1750 all the way up to 2010. All the different cousins and all the family.
You say it was a cousin that compiled this family?
It was a cousin of my father's.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Wow, wonderful.
Very interesting.
Very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
How did your parents meet?
Well, they were introduced by a friend, by a mutual friend, and my father was, he was working in a store somewhere. My mother was a legal secretary, and they dated for a while, and then my father proposed. And my mother said, "I'm not going to marry you until you have a profession." So he said, "Well, I have a job." She said, "No, you have to have a profession." So he said, "Well, what should I do?" Well, one of my father's sisters was married to a pharmacist.
Right.
And my mother said, "Go to the College of Pharmacy. You should be a pharmacist." And back then, he went to Valparaiso University in Indiana. In 2 years, you could become a registered pharmacist, and that's what he did.
That's amazing.
And he became a pharmacist, and if not for him, and not for her, he never would have done that.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, she was the entrepreneur of the family.
Right.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So we've talked a little bit about your family's history. Did they themselves talk about it? Did they share with you their immigrant experience?
Yeah, this is a picture of my dad's great-grandfather. This is from the Ukraine, from Russia.
What an amazing photograph.
Yeah, it's amazing that it's kept, because this picture would have been taken Well, this woman here, this would be my dad's mother.
Right.
Before, when she was just a teenager.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Yeah. And so this would have been my dad's grandfather.
Wow.
Would have been, yeah, yeah.
Do you know what their professions were?
Oh,
You
they
know,
were farmers.
They were farmers,
Yeah,
right.
they lived in, the Ukraine.
In the shtetl.
In a shtetl.
Right.
In Zhytomyr.
Have you ever been there? Have you visited?
No, I wanted to go. We were in Russia, but it's in the Ukraine,
Right.
which is, south and west. And so I haven't gone. But my cousin, Mike Carson, he went.
Right.
And he found a lot of the history.
Really? That's wonderful that he did that.
It's interesting, yeah. Yeah. But this picture, it's amazing how well it stayed.
It's very good quality.
Because this is my grandma here, Anna, and that's her parents. And these are all, back then to have 9 children was not a big deal.
No, that's right.
They all had many children.
Right.
So,
do you know where the DuBow family name comes? Where DuBow comes from?
Well, when the name in the Ukraine, the name was Dubovoy.
Okay.
And when my dad came to America with his parents, when they got off the boat, the man asked them, "Was ist der Nomen?" in Yiddish, what is your name? And they couldn't, they said Dubovoy. Well, the man, he asked them to spell it. Well, so they wrote D-U-B, Dub. And that was the name given to them, was Dub.
Wow.
Well, my dad's name was William.
Right.
He didn't like being called William Dub.
Right.
So he added O-W, which many people did back then.
Right.
When some came off the boat, they couldn't give a name.
Right.
So I asked, "What do you do?" He says, "Es gegeben a Schneider." That's a tailor.
Right.
In Yiddish. So they became Schneiders. That was their name given to them. Many happened that way. This is a copy of my father's registration for the First World War in the Army. He was just 18, but everybody had to register back then. And here it is. It's William Edward DuBow because he had changed it. But the father's name was Morris Dub.
Okay.
And it shows it as Dub there, which is an indication.
Oh, yes, it does.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Now, he was never called to the war.
I was going to say, did he do anything?
No, because the war ended.
Right.
Just about then, in 1918.
Right. That's fortunate.
Yeah, it was fortunate.
Yes.
But and there are many people whose names happened that way back
Very
then.
interesting. You have some other photographs here.
Yeah, this is my dad's parents. That's Morris and Anna DuBow, who were dedicating something.
That's right, the Yiddish alcove.
That's right. And then this is...
This is 1949, it says.
Yes.
How old were they at that point?
Well, this was their 50th wedding anniversary because they were married in 1899.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And this is my mother's parents. That's Isaac and Sarah. Yeah. Cohen.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's in Chicago? That was taken.
This would have been in Chicago. This is my dad's parents.
Right.
And my dad and my mother, and that's me.
That's you. That's a wonderful photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any siblings?
I have a sister.
You have a sister.
Yeah,
What's her name?
Thelma.
Thelma.
She's older, 2.5,
Yes.
3 years older than me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Was your family religious?
Yes.
Yes.
My father, he davened every morning and every night.
Right. And did they continue that when you were growing up?
I didn't, but my father always did.
Right.
And his parents were very religious. Here's a picture. This is my dad's father.
Blowing the shofar.
Blowing the shofar, yeah, Morris. Wonderful. Yeah. My mother's parents were religious, but not like my father's.
Right.
And so my father was very religious. His parents spoke mostly Yiddish,
Right.
as did my mother's, spoke mostly Yiddish. But my mother's parents, at least her father, was a businessman, so his English, as they say, he spoke in a sideways,
Right.
broken.
Yes.
My dad's father was also a salesman, but he mostly Yiddish, and the two grandmothers was mostly Yiddish, because in Chicago where they lived, the stores, the retail stores, everybody spoke Yiddish.
Right.
So they were able to get along quite well, yeah.
What kind of Jewish education did you have?
I went to Hebrew school. After school, the cheder, the synagogue, was right across the street from the grammar school, because most of the children in the school I was in were Jewish,
Right.
even though it was a public school. And so I had a Jewish education, and I was bar mitzvahed.
Right.
And I didn't go much beyond that.
No.
But Yiddish, I learned.
And you spoke it with your
Yeah,
parents
yeah,
and
but I haven't done it in so many years. So
Right.
it's a kind
little
of
rusty.
a broken Yiddish.
Right.
I can get along, but not that well. But my mother kept a kosher house,
Right.
and my father davened twice a day. So I always knew I was Jewish.
Right.
Yeah, and I appreciated it.
And what was it like growing up Jewish in Chicago?
Well, we lived in a neighborhood where it was mostly all Jewish.
Right.
So
You didn't experience any anti-Semitism?
not much. We got into fights a little bit.
Right.
In high school, it was interesting because I started high school in 1945, just when the Second World War had ended. And in the high school that I attended on the south side of Chicago, there were some repatriated Japanese families who were let out of the camps. During the Second World War, they were all interned. And so they were let out of the camps, and some of the children came to our high school. And then we had some American children whose fathers or uncles were killed in the war. It was not a pretty scene. So that kind of took a little bit off of the anti-Semitism and put it more onto them. It was unfortunate, but that was a problem. And then also the neighborhoods were changing. The African Americans were beginning to come across certain lines in Chicago. So we had some blacks that came into our school, which also became a problem. So I didn't experience much of that, no.
Do you remember hearing rumors from the war, what was going on in Europe, or did you have a sense of what was going on?
Because I was a teenager, so we had air raid warnings.
Right.
We had all of that. We had blackouts.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you feel fearful at all, or was it something that was kind of over there? And
Well, yeah. I mean, we were kids.
Right.
We were teenagers, and so we didn't.
Yeah,
we
life
didn't,
was going on.
Yeah, we didn't really
Right.
understand it all. But I do remember we got word about how so many Jews were put in concentration camps and were killed and were gassed.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my grandmothers saying, "It can't be, or there is no God."
Right. Very difficult time to come to terms with that whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah. But
What was your school? So you've given me a little bit of your school experience, but what were your best subjects? What did you like doing at school?
lunch and recess.
My favorites too.
Those were my two best. I was an okay student.
Right.
I got along.
Right.
my sister was very smart.
Yeah.
And she was older.
Right.
And so my mother thought that I should be the same. But I was just an okay student.
Right. You didn't have a sense of what you wanted to do when you grew up?
No, not really. I worked from the time, I was maybe 8 years old.
Right. What did you do?
Well, I sold newspapers. I had a newspaper route. I helped a man. He collected bags and baskets from grocery stores, and then he would take it to the market on Saturday, and he would sell it to people who needed burlap bags or baskets. And so I worked with him in the afternoons after school, and then on Saturdays we would take it. I always liked to work. I liked to work.
That's wonderful.
I always enjoyed that. And then when I was about to finish high school, I was going to go downstate to the University of Illinois with, as my mother said, the rest of the bums. But she said, no, you're not going to do that. You need to have a profession. I said, well, what should I do? She said, your father's a pharmacist, your uncle's a pharmacist. I had two uncles who were pharmacists. I had a cousin who was going to be a pharmacist. And she said, you go to the College of Pharmacy. And I said, well, Ma, you can't just go to the College of Pharmacy. The University of Illinois Colleges of Medicine, Dentistry, and Pharmacy are in Chicago.
Right.
They're not down in Champaign.
Right.
The professional schools are in Chicago. She said, well, there's an exam you can take, and if you can pass it, you can go right from high school. Okay. Well, I worked for my dad in his drugstore. He had a drugstore, and I worked there. And so the exam had a lot to do with pharmacy.
Right.
And I wasn't that smart, but I just knew what they were asking. So anyhow, I passed that test, and they took me in. There were 130 in our class, and there were about 25 of us that were right out of high school.
Right.
And that's how I went through. It was a 4-year course then. And I went through the College of Pharmacy, and as soon as I finished, I was drafted. It was Korean wartime.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
first of all, I have to say I think you were smart. But also your mum was very smart, wasn't she?
She was the smartest of us all.
She had very
She
good
was
ideas.
the smartest of us all. Interesting story about my mother. She only went to high school 2 years.
Right.
Because back then, women, she would have gone into high school in about 1916, 1917, and 2 years.
Right.
Then after that, she went to work. Well, she wanted to be a lawyer. And so as time went on, she went, because they lived in Chicago, she went to Northwestern University,
Right.
and she applied, and she got into the college to go to school there. And then she went into the law school, and she said, I want to enter law school.
Right.
And they looked at her application, they said, but you're Jewish.
Oh,
And she
my
said,
goodness.
yes. She said, we don't take Jews here.
Oh my goodness.
And certainly not going to take a woman.
Oh, wow. That's very hard.
Yeah.
Was it a frustration all of her life?
It
or
frustrated her,
something?
but she worked in a law office
Right.
in Chicago for a prestigious firm. And so she had that experience,
Right.
but she always wanted to be a lawyer. Yeah, yeah.
So when you studied pharmacy, was there something you liked to do best in the lab? Was there an area that pharmacy
I liked
that you liked?
compounding.
Right.
I enjoyed that,
Right.
yeah. And
Do you have fond memories of being a student at
it
college?
was probably one of the happiest times of my life.
Really?
It was good people. There were about 60% of our class were veterans
Right.
from the Second World War.
Right.
So most everybody there was older than us, because I was 18 going in.
Right.
And these guys were well in their 20s and 30s. And it was just interesting being with them, talking with them.
Right, of course.
We had 4 women in the class.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
2 of them were nuns.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because the
interesting.
Catholic diocese, they have hospitals.
Right, of
And
course.
a lot of the pharmacists are nuns.
Right.
Excuse me.
That's very interesting.
They were more fun than half of the guys.
That's wonderful.
They were great. The nuns, God, we had more fun with those women. We loved them.
Amazing.
They were very, very good.
Have you managed to stay in touch with anyone
Well,
from that time?
yes. They have an annual dinner
Right.
for graduates of the University of Illinois College of Pharmacy in Chicago.
Right.
I just went to one about 6 months ago. And then they have on certain years, about every 5 or 6 years, because I was in the class of 53.
Right.
So in 2003, we had a reunion. In 2013, in 23,
Right.
you know, and so we go to those, but there aren't many of us left. Yeah.
Were there any fraternities? Did you join a fraternity?
Yes, I was in a fraternity, but it was pharmacy oriented.
Right.
Yeah, and I still have the paddle.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I still have that. Yeah.
What a wonderful time. But then you went to the Army afterwards?
I was
is that
drafted.
Right?
I graduated in June, and the following January I was drafted.
Right.
That was, the war had just ended in Korea, but I was drafted and sent to Fort Sam Houston, to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for basic training,
Right.
and then Fort Sam Houston. And I was in a MASH outfit.
That's amazing.
Mobile
Really?
Army Surgical Hospital. Yeah.
Was it like the program?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. It's just the way you
That's
see it on
wonderful.
television. Yeah,
A wonderful program.
Yeah. We used to go out into the field and
Right.
train and play war.
So it was an awful and a wonderful time all
Yeah,
together.
it was interesting.
Right.
And that was in the MASH outfit, maybe a year. And then they transferred me to a pharmacy in one of the hospitals at Brooke Army Hospital.
Right.
And then 24 months I was out.
You were out.
Yeah.
And do you still have any contact with any of the people that were there?
No, not. I have the pictures.
Right.
And, yeah, I have the books, but
Yeah.
no, I don't.
No. And what do you think now to the whole situation happening with Korea? Does that
It's
worry
interesting.
you?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's troubling. That's the way it has to be.
Right.
It really doesn't have to be that way, but you're dealing with individuals who want to have a lot of power,
Right.
don't have much sense.
Indeed. So we heard Linda unfortunately had a bit of a cough there earlier. I think we've got rather a dusty room in here. It's all the books. But Linda is your wife. How did you both meet?
We met. The first time I saw her was on the beach,
Right.
in Jacksonville, and she was with some friends, and I was with two of my friends, and Linda is 6 years younger than me.
Right.
So she was, I think, maybe a senior in high school
Right.
when I met her, and I had just come out of the Army. I think I told my mother that I had I saw this girl, her name was Linda Lovitz, and my mother every now and then would say, what about that girl Linda Lovitz? She's such a nice girl. She'd say, why don't you call her? Well, one day I did. And we dated. We were very good friends.
Right.
I mean, we had the best times, and I was traveling then, working, and she would go with me. She went to Miami with me because she had a friend there she stayed with. And I think it's important to be good friends. And then we did, just one night in her house, we said, I asked her to marry me.
Wonderful.
And that was it.
And you think that's the recipe for success in marriage?
Well, it
Good
worked for
friends.
us. And that was
How many years in
57? 57, is that right?
Close.
57
years?
years. Yeah.
57 years.
Yeah, we were married in 1960, January 31st of 1960.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you have how many
We had
children?
Michael and Susan.
Michael and Susan.
Yeah.
And when were they born? Am I testing you now?
No. Susan was born in January of '61, and Michael was born in August of '64. 63, right.
I think that's
A close count.
close enough. What about Jacksonville? When did you all move to Jacksonville?
Well,
Florida?
my parents moved there while I was in the service. My sister married a dentist
Right.
in Jacksonville in 1948. And so my parents moved there because my sister started having children.
Right.
She wound up having 5, but she had about 2 then, and my parents wanted to be with her and the grandchildren.
Right.
And so while I was in the service, they moved there. And then when I came out, I went there. But as a pharmacist, I was registered in the state of Illinois,
Oh, right.
but there's no reciprocity in Florida. You have to take the full board.
Right.
So I told my mother, if I pass, I'll stay. If not, I'm going back to Chicago. Well, I got lucky and passed,
Right.
and I stayed. My dad had a little drugstore. I worked for him for about a year, and then I went off on my own.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's when you set up Lawrence Pharmaceuticals at that point? Can you tell me something about how that all started?
It was a packaging company, what in the industry is called wets and dries, over-the-counter liquids and powders.
Right.
And I would go and I sold many of the grocery chains and sundry wholesalers, and they would ask me about other drug products. You know, well, Laura, you're a pharmacist. Can you get me this, that, or the other?
Right.
And I said, well, let me see how to do that. Well, in order to do that, you need to become a drug wholesaler.
Right.
So I said, okay, let's try that. And so I got the necessary licenses, and we became eventually a full-line drug wholesaler, like a McKesson or that type of company. And we sold drugstores throughout the Southeast.
Oh my goodness.
We were one of the first drug wholesalers to sell drug products to grocery chains. You know, grocery stores, they never had that,
Is that right?
drug products.
Wow.
And so we sold them, and we sold drugstores and drug chains, and grew it to a fairly nice sized business. And we sold it in 1960? 86,
Right.
excuse me,
Right, no. So that
1986.
20 or so years?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. We sold it to a major chain drug wholesaler. And then a few years later, we started another company. It was primarily utilizing the generic drugs that major drug manufacturers had that were still branded. They hadn't genericized them yet. And we began, when they began to genericize them, because they didn't want that image, even though they did genericize them. So we took on the role of selling the generic drugs of major pharmaceutical manufacturers to drug chains and generic distributors. And that became a very interesting business.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Were there many challenges involved?
Yes,
Right.
yeah. But we overcame most of them, and it did quite well.
It sounds like you were leading the way. A very
We were.
exciting
We were one
time.
of the unique that were selling those branded generics, so
Right.
to speak.
Right.
That's what they were called. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so then what was your continued involvement in the pharmaceutical industry after Lawrence Pharmaceuticals?
Well,
was
we had this HMS. Actually, we had hooked up with a UK company, United Kingdom.
Right.
And so we called the sales company, because we were just sales, we were not producing anything. We called it HMS because the 3 children are Helen, Michael, and Susan. Helen is Michael's wife, and then Susan. And the Brits who we were dealing with, they thought it was in Her Majesty's service.
It's wonderful.
So they loved that.
They loved it.
Until they found out it was Helen, Michael, and Susan.
I love it.
And then other branded manufacturers found out what we were doing, and of course we went to them. And so other branded manufacturers said, well, gosh, if you can do this for them, can you do it for us? And we said, certainly. And so we had a whole line of so-called branded generics.
Right. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I guess we're coming to the end of the first part of our interview,
Okay.
and so a good place to end might be to offer any words of wisdom for anyone going into studying pharmacy today.
Well, pharmacy is a great industry.
Right.
Being a pharmacist is a marvelous profession, and it certainly serves a need here in our economy.
Right.
And when I went into it, there were very, very few women. Now it's fully 50%
Right.
women. And I think that's an added advantage because women have a much different empathy or way of dealing with a patient
Right.
who comes to them with a prescription.
Right.
When you're ill and you walk into a store with a prescription, it's not really what you want to do.
Right.
You know you need it,
Yes.
but you're not particularly happy. I don't feel good, I'm sick, don't bother me. And women, I think, have a much better calming effect.
Right.
But not to say there are many, I mean, it's all pharmacists have great passion.
Right.
But I think it's a marvelous profession for women.
And you would encourage anyone to
Absolutely.
take that path.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
this conversation.
My
Look
pleasure.
forward to talking to you in the next part.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so we're back in the Judaica suite for the second part of our interview with Mr. Lawrence DuBow. And while we had a break, your children reminded us that there were some stories that we'd missed, and that we don't want to miss those. So we're going to talk about what happened in your father's drugstore.
Oh, my father had a drugstore in Chicago on the south side at 47th and Drexel, which was a rather interesting neighborhood. It was in a hotel, the Sutherland Hotel. It was in the first floor. And in the basement of this hotel, there was a bookie.
Uh-huh.
Yes, certainly not legal at that time in Chicago. This was in the 40s, 1940s. And it was right next to the stockroom for the drugstore, so I could hear everything that was going on with the horse races around the country and with the betting and with other assorted forms of devious interests in this particular site. So as a teenager, it was quite an education.
I can imagine.
Very interesting.
Of the sort of stories that one reads in Damon Runyon.
Exactly, but does not reveal in an interview like this.
Right, okay. We'll leave it at that. Oh, wonderful. We were going to focus this second part on philanthropy and Jewish life in Florida. So my first question to you is, you established a wonderful foundation, the DuBow Family Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about why you established it and what it means to you?
Well, we established that foundation approximately 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And we felt if we had that capability, and we're lucky enough to have that capability, that we should start to give back. And so we made it a family event. The children and my wife and I, we would meet regularly twice a year, and each had a board book, and all the requests for donations were well documented. We would make trips to the different agencies that were requesting and find out what they did and with whom they did it, where their monies were being used and given. And being philanthropic is not difficult if you do it in the right way.
Right.
And so that's what we wanted to do. That was the emphasis. Certainly we made a mistake or two, but for the most part, we've been very lucky, and we have helped a lot of people through a lot of good agencies.
Right, that's wonderful. So what would you describe as your proudest achievement?
Oh my. Well, one of the agencies that we work with works with inner city children,
Right.
at-risk inner city children, and each year they have what they call Shop with the Jock, an athlete.
Right, right.
And we bring approximately 50 children to a Target store around Christmas time, and each child is allowed to spend $100 to buy gifts for family or friends, not for themselves. And 2 or 3 or 4 of these children are matched with a Jaguars football player.
Wow.
So they go through the store and they have their list and they're shopping with the jock.
How fun.
And it's kind of a fun thing for the children, and it's an education because now they're buying for others.
Right.
And they have that ability to spend for others. And we've been doing this for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe longer. And we've come to find that the children do very well. It's a question of who has more fun.
Right.
The kids or the jock.
Right. What a wonderful
Because
idea.
the athletes love it.
Yes.
And every year they always ask, are we doing that again?
Right. It must be such a good feeling.
Yeah, when are we having it? Well, because some of these athletes, when they look at that child, they tell me, that was me 18 years ago.
Right.
That was me 15 years ago.
Right.
So they know.
Yeah.
They can relate
Yeah.
to it.
That's
So that's a fun thing.
that's a wonderful achievement.
Yeah.
And you've given amazing support to the University of Florida. Why? What is your philosophy behind giving to the university?
When we started a business here in Florida many years ago, a wholesale drug business, the pharmacists in the state of Florida, we sold all the drugstores and we sold the pharmacies within grocery and discount stores.
Right.
They were very good to us. And so we felt it was time that we gave back to pharmacy within the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And what better way than through the university?
Right.
So we're supportive of the College of Pharmacy of the University of Florida and some other entities within the University of Florida.
Right.
It's just our way of giving back because they were very good to us.
Right. And have you been pleased with the way you've seen UF grow over the years?
Yes,
And
it's been well run.
Right.
Yeah, it all starts at the top,
Yes.
and they've had good people at the
Right,
top,
right.
and that filters down.
Yeah.
So it's been a good experience for us, and hopefully good for the university and for the children of the university.
Right. That's good to know. So what would you, how would you describe your philanthropic philosophy?
Well, I try to make sure that we embrace all aspects of philanthropy, but concentrate in particular arenas.
Right.
Jewish agencies is our number one.
Right.
We give to the synagogues, we give to agencies within Jewish life, and that's of key importance to us. Outside of that, it's education, it's children, at-risk children,
Right.
and that's predominantly, but there's a lot of other small agencies that we try to help and do good work with. It's quite surprising once you get into the nonprofit world.
Right.
It's a totally different entity.
Right.
It's different from anything that you would normally see in our way of life.
Right.
It's educational.
Yes.
It's inspirational. It's very important. Everybody should do it.
Right. There is something possibly Jewish about this philanthropy. I mean, Since I've come here from England, where there isn't a huge culture of philanthropy, I've been very struck by not only the American philanthropic culture, but the Jewish philanthropic culture. It's huge. Do you think any of your giving stems from your Jewish education, your Jewish roots? Is there a Jewish element?
Well, everybody has one or two things that they remember distinctly.
Right.
I remember during the Second World War, we lived on a third floor walk up, and we were of moderate means. My dad was a pharmacist and my mother was working, but it was in 1943 perhaps, and I was 12 years old, and a man came and told my mother that he's selling war bonds. And she said, absolutely. And she bought a war bond, a $50 bond for $37.50, which to me was a lot of money. And I just never forgot it. So you learn.
Right.
You learn from that. You learn from your parents. You learn from particular incidents.
Right. Many families had little books that tzedakah.
Yes, tzedakah boxes. Yes, we still have one.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Raising funds for Israel. And
that's right.
Jewish causes.
It's not particularly easy to give away money. You have to know how. There's an art to it.
Yeah.
You have to be taught.
Right.
Some people never learn.
Yeah.
They think it's going with them.
Right.
It ain't going with you. So you might as well find good places to put it,
right.
And don't be shy to spend it. Take good care of your family first.
Right.
And then give it away.
Absolutely. That kind of leads into one of my other questions that I have, whether you ever feel exhausted by the requests for financial help, because there are so many causes out there.
Yeah.
Do you find that depressing? Is that something?
It's interesting because you can't do it all.
Right.
And you have to realize that. You have to pick those avenues on which you're going to do as much as you possibly can,
right.
or make a difference in some of their lives. And over and above that, you just have to feel comfortable that you're doing the best you can.
Right. You're obviously an extremely successful family foundation. Are there any times when one of you wants to support a cause so badly, but the others don't feel that that's the way to go? Do you have challenges like that?
I don't think we've gotten into that, but the children and Susan and Michael and Helen, or Linda, my wife, if there's an agency or a cause that they want us to give to, absolutely,
right.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep, not a problem. We'll talk about it and we'll go ahead and do it. Or in our meetings twice a year, sometimes they'll bring something that we've had a chance to review or to look at. Excuse me. And the children need to be involved.
Right.
This last round, one of the grandchildren, Charlie, he was in the meeting.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful, starting them
because I'm not going to live forever. And the children, they'll do it. They'll take it up and do it very well.
That's wonderful. I don't know how you do it. You're a very busy person, but you also do volunteer work. You serve on boards, community boards. What do you think about, why is it important to volunteer in this way?
Well, I think it's important in two ways. First of all, as an individual, I want to know what's going on in the community. And you're not going to get all that by reading the newspaper.
Right.
You have to taste it and touch it and smell it.
Yeah.
You've got to be involved. And secondly, I think you have a duty to do that. You have to give back.
Right.
And I've served on a lot of different boards, and I've enjoyed it. And some of them I've chaired, which is an honor, and I appreciate it. So it's something that everybody should do.
Right.
And I know people are working and they're busy, and but still in all, there's time. There's a certain amount of time
What are some of the community organizations that you've been involved with that you?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I couldn't remember them all. Well, at the Jacksonville Jewish Center, I'm involved there. I have been. I was president once. The Jewish Family and Community Services, River Garden, and the Jacksonville Symphony. I was on that board for a while. We have a marvelous symphony.
Really, I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yes, very good. You must come.
I will come.
Yeah, and we've been supportive of the symphony for many years.
Right.
We support a concert every year, and we support students at the symphony also.
Wonderful.
We have concerts for the children. I support the schools and KIP, which is Knowledge is Power. You
What's
familiar with KIP?
No.
KIP is a program. It's called Knowledge is Power program, and it's for at-risk inner-city students.
Right.
It's nationwide,
Oh.
and they take those students and they put them in these KIP schools, and it's very intense. It's a different type of training,
Right.
but it takes these inner-city at-risk children and molds them into outstanding students.
That sounds excellent.
You must look it up.
I will.
KIP, K-I-P-P.
Wonderful.
So it's a variety of programs.
That's a long list.
Yeah, but well, Teach for America.
Right.
You're familiar with that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that one I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've supported that from the start in Jacksonville.
Oh my goodness.
They have a great campus.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And in your spare time,
And in my spare time,
you owned the Jaguars. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
yes, we were part owners in the Jacksonville Jaguar football team. We were in the original group
Right.
that brought it to Jacksonville. That's an experience. It's a great
I'm sure.
experience. Everybody should do it once.
Right.
And we've sold it.
Right.
We sold it about 4 or 5 years ago now, but we still support it and go to the games. I, along with another partner and somebody who worked for the team, we managed the Jaguar Foundation, which was we gave away to a lot of agencies and supported a lot of programs for children.
Right.
This was something that our general partner, Wayne Weber, his wife, Dolores, she was insistent upon having this foundation, and it worked very well. So she and I and one other partner, we managed it and did most of the gifting. Yeah.
So were you in there at the start of
Yeah.
the right? What period was that?
Well, let's see. We started to try to get the franchise. It was around the year 99, 1999. 89, excuse me, 1989. And it was awarded in 2093. 93. It's a good thing he's here.
Probably to help.
93, and it was a great experience.
Favorite Jaguar moments?
Oh my. When we went to the Super Bowl.
Ah,
Yeah.
when was that?
When was it?
Yeah.
Was it 96?
I'm testing you all now.
Almost went. One away.
Oh, we didn't go to the Super Bowl. We almost
Almost
went.
at the Super
I'm so glad he's here. Yeah. 96.
Right.
Yeah.
An exciting year.
Yeah. We had good years. We had great fun.
Right.
We would go to the Super Bowl every year, but the Jaguars weren't playing.
Oh. Right. That must be a wonderful experience.
It was. It
Yeah.
is. It's fun.
Great
Yeah, it's
atmosphere.
great fun.
And you follow the football here at
Yeah, yeah.
University of Florida as well.
Yeah, we have.
Yes.
Yeah. We had season tickets here for years because Susan went here and Michael went here. And so,
Right.
yeah.
So you've lived in Jacksonville since the 60s, is that right?
When I came out of the service, I went to Jacksonville. I came out in
50s, sometime in the 50s?
yes, I
Right.
came out in 56. No, yeah. 54, yeah, 56.
So how have you seen Jacksonville change over time? What's
Oh my,
what's the good and what's the bad?
well, got a lot more traffic.
Right.
But we have great park areas.
Right.
The beaches are right there.
Yeah.
Jacksonville has grown. I first visited Jacksonville in the late 40s because my sister married a dentist
Right.
from Jacksonville in 1948, I believe.
Must have looked quite different.
It was much different, yeah.
Does it still
yeah.
have all the old buildings that you can see in the photographs?
Some, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There was the Cohen Brothers, was a big store.
Cohen Brothers, that's now City Hall. Yeah, yeah.
What about Jewish life in Jacksonville? How is
Well,
that
it's
changed?
obviously grown.
Yeah. Is Jacksonville a good place to be Jewish?
It is, yeah.
Is there
There's,
anything-
I want to say 13,000 Jews in Jacksonville. Is that about? I think that's about the right number.
How many synagogues are
There are 4. There's Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and another at the beach, a conservative. And then we have the Chabad.
Right.
It's very big.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you think that Jewish kids are moving away from their Jewish roots?
Well, intermarriage
Intermarriage.
hurts.
Does that worry you? Is that something that
Well,
bothers you?
I don't. Intermarriage doesn't bother me, but as long as they maintain their religion, I'm happy for them.
Right.
But it's different. It's much different.
You and Linda and your family have so generously named our wonderful Yiddish study alcove and our Yiddish literature alcove in memory of your grandparents.
Yes.
So what is the connection to Yiddish?
Well, my grandparents, all 4 of them, their first language was Yiddish.
Right.
Because of the way they grew up and where they came from. My 2 grandfathers spoke English quite well with an accent because they were working. But my grandmothers spoke some, but only when they had to.
Right.
Their first language was Yiddish. And so that's where I really learned. And I learned it quite well, but then I stopped using it, you know.
Was that the only language you communicated with them in? Did they speak English?
Well, they understood.
They understood.
They understood.
Right.
But they would very often respond to me in Yiddish
Right.
when I would, talk to them in English.
Right.
Because their English was, as we used to say, they spoke with a sideways, a broken English.
Right. You have a wonderful family chart here we haven't talked about. Would you mind showing us?
Sure. Yes. Yeah, this was on my mother's side.
Right.
Yeah.
They were Yiddish speakers as well on your mother's side, or?
Yes,
Right.
her parents. And my father was also because of his parents. My father's mother and father spoke Yiddish as a primary language. So he spoke it. But on my mother's side, Morris Cohen, who was my mother's grandfather, he had 2 wives. And this was Rella on this side, and then Anne on this side. And so this was my grandfather here, Isaac. That was my mother's father.
Right.
And that's the tree that you see here. So,
And it's Anna and Isaac that we're naming the Yiddish study alcove. What was it?
no, Isaac.
Sarah and Isaac.
Sarah and Isaac.
Sarah
And Isaac, yeah.
and Isaac.
That's Anna and Morris.
Anna and
yeah.
Morris.
Uh,
And
but-
this was the family that came to England.
Came from England.
Came from England.
Yeah.
And who compiled this chart? It's amazing.
This was a cousin
Right.
of mine who did this. but it's old. It's not current.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you said Susan's here, but Michael
Susan's here, but Michael isn't.
Is
so.
Michael going to finish the chart?
What's that?
Are you going to finish the chart?
Oh, yeah, I know.
Put yourself on it?
So this is, 40, 50 years old, 50 years old if Michael's not here.
Is it the same cousin that compiled the history that you showed us earlier?
Oh, that's on my father's side.
That's the father's
This is
side.
on my
Okay.
mother's side.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
you have two cousins who have been excellent in
Did-
recording family
did good,
history.
Good work, yeah, yeah,
That's terrific.
yeah. But this, as you can see, this was a very large family
Yes.
because each of my grandfather's brothers and his father, my grandfather's father, had all of this family and then all of this family as well, because he had two wives.
It seems like you're very interested in history too, and you've collected things.
Yes.
So you've collected, this is not just all of what you have have other photographs.
Yes,
And
yes.
that you even have, what's the ticket over here?
This, yes. This is a ticket to hear Franklin Delano Roosevelt speak on October 14th, 1936
Wow.
at the Chicago Stadium. Yeah, my mother went, and so she gave me this ticket.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
How much what have you got? What else have you got that you've been collecting over the years?
I have programs from football games, from all sorts of things. I have a program, a Notre Dame football game
Right.
from 1926.
Wow.
And I have that program, and the coach of Notre Dame, it shows his picture, was Knut Rockne,
Right.
and the ball players were the Four Horsemen, Still Dreyer, Miller, Leighton, and Crowley.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness, that's a piece of history.
It's a piece of history. And I have sometimes people who went to Notre Dame, they want to see that program, or they want to use it for something, and I tell them, you can't. I'll give you a copy.
Yes.
And so I give them a copy, and then they use it for a dinner or for whatever else. Yeah, because there aren't too many of those around.
We speak to a lot of collectors because, of course, we collect collections, and
Sure.
we always ask, what makes you collect things? Why?
I don't know. It's just a habit.
Yeah.
My mother collected.
Right.
She saved things, and so I got hand-me-downs from her. I had a lot of great newspapers. I had the Chicago Tribune that said Dewey defeats Truman. But back in the 40s. And I had other newspapers, but when I went in the service and my parents moved, she threw a lot of that out. But I still have, when Kennedy was shot, I have that newspaper. I have other newspapers that I was able to save from the 40s. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Do you get the feeling that the younger generation won't save things?
I don't know, ask them.
Because we're kind of in a digital world now. Things
Yeah,
won't
that's
get
right.
saved.
But there's nothing like opening up that newspaper and seeing, that you can buy a six-pack of beer for $1.
Right.
I mean, that, it was all pre-war stuff and even post-war, but I love to look at the ads and the editorials. Yeah. And I also have a stamp collection.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that I've saved from when I was just very young, even before I was a teenager. I have stamps from countries that no longer exist.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I have stamps with the picture of Hitler.
Do you? Wow.
I have German stamps going back to Hitler's days. But he's on the stamp.
What drew you to stamps? Why stamps?
I don't know. Guys started collecting stamps. This was, I started collecting, I was maybe 8 years old, 1938, 1939. And I still have it.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't collect much anymore.
Do you know how many you have?
Oh my God, it's a book full.
Really?
Yeah, well, the stamp collector's book has pages for each country, I have no idea. It's just, and I look at it every now and then, and I still save some, some newer stamps, but some of the old ones. I mean, I have Queen Elizabeth, I have Queen Victoria stamps.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful. It sounds a wonderful collection.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you had to live your life again, is there anything you'd do differently?
I don't think so. No.
That's good.
I've been very lucky. Yeah. I wouldn't mind doing it again, but I'd probably do it all the
All the
same.
same.
Yeah. Make the same mistakes and do all the right things.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Life is good.
That's good to hear. So I'm sorry for my next sad question. Do you have any concerns about being Jewish in America today?
I don't think so. I'm happy to be Jewish. I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm not one who's going to change anti-Semitism, but what I will do is support those agencies that fight it.
Right.
And try my best to show that who I am and what I am as a Jew is a good American and a good person. And those people or clubs or organizations that restrict their memberships and exclude blacks or Jews, it's not fine, but I'm not going to picket them.
Right.
I'm just not.
Right.
I will ignore it. That's probably wrong, but I'm not going to do that.
Do you think we can fight most effectively with education? Is that the way
Perhaps,
to do
and support those agencies that do fight it.
it? Right.
I do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the ADL and others.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems that you have a very close family, 2 children, and is it 3 grandchildren?
3 grandchildren.
What are their names?
Sophie, Charlie, and Shira.
Right. They're lovely names.
Yes.
Ages?
Sophie is 24. 25.
Sorry. Testing on the
Charlie is going to be, what, 22, 23. Okay, I'm a year behind. Shira, I know, is 17. Got it.
What are your hopes for them?
I just hope that they'll be happy
Yeah.
and healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy is very important.
Yes.
And just keep looking forward, but every once in a while you got to look around and even maybe look back to see what's back there that maybe you missed or you could have done something about but didn't.
That's an excellent message. That's an excellent message. I hope I covered
You did
asked
great.
good questions,
You-
but we'll finish by asking if there's anything you wanted to add that I didn't cover or that we really should talk about.
I don't think so. I thought you covered it quite well.
Okay.
Most important thing is to just try to stay healthy and happy.
Mhm. Yeah.
If you can do that, you're okay.
Right. You've got nothing if you haven't got your health, my
You-
grandma used to
and
say.
your grandma was a very smart woman. That's exactly right.
Right.
Yes,
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank
Mr.
you.
DuBow, for this wonderful interview.
I enjoyed it. My pleasure.
Thanks.
But this is not near complete because this was done 25 or 30 years
Right,
ago.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. It's going up that way. I
Yeah.
got it now. Yep.
Right,
Yep.
this way.
Right.
So it shows I was married to Linda, but I only had Susan.
Oh,
Michael
that's
wasn't
when
even
you
born
did-
yet.
oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
So this goes way back. But you can see the size.
Oh, it's huge.
And my mother, they had a cousins club. So it was all of this plus all of this.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he had 2 wives. Yeah.
Gosh, I wish I had one of these for my family. This is amazing.
Yeah. 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 But it's not current because these people have passed, and some of these have also. But it goes this way.
That way.
Yeah. But it's interesting because, as I said, my mother's grandfather, Morris, had 2 wives.
Right, so it makes it quite an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
story. Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Hopefully not my great-grandfather had 2 wives, but both at the same time.
I don't.
He did.
Oh, he did?
He
Oh, okay.
He came over, he was living in England, he was married. He came over here to join the Yiddish theatre. Got married again.
Oh, why not?
So somewhere here in America I have another family.
Oh, so there you go. Yeah, because somewhere, well, I stayed in touch with some of these. Yeah, some of these I had stayed in touch with, and then, of course, all of these, the Cohens, and then on this side, I'm in touch with. But these folks are in the UK.
Oh.
The Featherstones and the Lawsons.
Oh.
Yeah, they're in the UK. Yeah.